I bragged that my family's hardware store had absolutely everything in stock. The very next day, government officials showed up right at my doorstep. They stared at the ordinary, run-of-the-mill screws sitting on my shelves. Then they saw the spicy noodles and the pack of pads I'd just sold and froze. They just stood there, lost in thought. I was certain they were about to brand me a total fraud. But then, the eldest expert leading the group spoke with a deadly serious face. "Comrade, we aren't here for screws. We want to know if you have aircraft carriers." I had inherited this family shop when it was already on the brink of bankruptcy. My only plan was to be a lazy boss and kill time until it went under. I started making short videos just to pass the hours. Suddenly, I awakened the universal mind system within me. No matter what a customer wanted, I had the answer and the inventory. I realized this system was my direct line to anything in existence. I never turned anyone down, answering every request with a simple yes. That one word made me an overnight sensation on the internet. As the crowds began to swarm my shop, the skeptics arrived too. They were desperate to unmask me as a liar, and now, the moment had come. A line as long as a dragon had formed right in front of my store. They nudged each other with excitement, waiting for me to finally fail. "Boss, in your video you said that for any real item under 1,000 yuan, we could ask for it freely, and if you didn't have it, you'd pay us 10 times its value. Does your word still stand?" I nodded and replied, "Of course it stands, but I have to warn you first. If I have it, you are obligated to buy it at market price. No coming here just to look without buying. That's bad for business." The moment I finished speaking, a wave of relaxed laughter erupted from the crowd. "No problem, boss. Don't you worry about that. As long as you have it, we guarantee we'll buy it. We're just curious to see exactly how far your skills go." Everyone was rubbing their hands together in anticipation. They were practically dripping with confidence. Before coming here, they had plotted in their group chat to come up with specific ideas. They wanted strange, obscure things a normal hardware store would never carry. They were absolutely certain. They didn't believe for a second that I actually had everything. I took a quick glance at the comments flying across my phone screen. Calmly, I smiled right into the camera lens. "All right, friends, the Oliu Hardware Challenge officially begins. Let the first challenger step up." The moment I said that, a young man with a buzz cut pushed his way forward. "Boss, listen close. What I'm asking for definitely exists in this world. And it's famous, too. Tell me, do you have an AK?" As soon as those words left his mouth, a strange silence gripped the entire shop. Everyone in line stood there, completely stunned. Even my own smile froze. I never would have expected this. The first challenger had played his strongest card right out of the gate. I had imagined endless difficult requests, like a vintage toy or some obscure specialized tool. I'd even rehearsed how to handle requests for inflatable dolls, but this... "What's wrong, boss? Didn't you say you had everything?" "An AK-47 definitely exists." "Hey friend, are you out of your mind? You come to a hardware store for that. Why don't you show me what its market price is first?" This time, it was the kid with the buzz cut who looked dumbfounded. It was true, here in the territory of Manhwa. How could a thing like that even have a legal market price? The price of an item like that was something you'd have to consult a very different kind of person for. I'm talking about the penal code. Seeing him speechless, I made a dismissive gesture. I waved my hand without a hint of hesitation, telling him to get lost. Enough, no, don't interrupt my business." Next, the livestream comments paused for a second, then suddenly exploded. A torrent of laughter flooded the screen. "Haha, it just started, and he's already going to extremes. This guy knows how a stream works. Boss, let me ask for something. Did I really just ask for a one-way ticket to prison? Even if you had it, you wouldn't dare sell it." Just as I was preparing to welcome the next customer, the icy voice of the system suddenly echoed in my mind. Ding. Customer request detected. AK-47 assault rifle. Product generated in the special safe in the back warehouse. Do you wish to collect it? I panicked and screamed at the system in my head. Are you insane? That's the real deal. Even if I have it, I wouldn't dare sell it. Do you want me to die young? You want me to rot in jail, don't you? Take it back. Withdraw it now. Product has been withdrawn. The system's voice sounded almost resentful. I took a deep breath to calm my racing heart and shouted toward the door. Next, with the first brave soul as an example, the second customer stepped up. He looked much more normal, a young man in black-rimmed glasses. He had the air of a college student as he adjusted his frames with a mischievous grin. "Boss, do you have Malatang?" he asked. The crowd in the shop and the livestream chat both burst out laughing. Huh, talk about a sharp turn. Going from an AK-47 to spicy soup? I give that imagination a 10 out of 10. Let's see what the boss says now. What's he going to do? Does he have a hidden kitchen back in that warehouse or something? But to everyone's absolute shock, I just gave the kid a look. Cold and indifferent. I calmly uttered a single, classic word. Yes. The entire place fell silent again, and the smile on the kid's face instantly froze solid. He couldn't believe his ears as I turned around and headed toward the warehouse. Following the system's instructions, I spotted a box. It was a thermal container sitting right there in the corner. I pulled out an extra-large lunchbox. It was still wrapped up tight. I set the container down on the counter with a heavy thud. I looked the kid in the eye. I ordered this for my own breakfast this morning, but I haven't touched it yet. It's a special order. 5 servings of beef, 3 of tripe, assorted meatballs, and veggies. Market price is 100 euros. The kid stood there, completely stunned, staring at the massive portion in front of him. The malatang released an intoxicating, spicy aroma that filled the entire shop. I could see his entire worldview crumbling in real time. With trembling hands, he paid the bill and lugged the heavy soup away. He walked out of the shop with a look of pure bewilderment on his face. Even after crossing the threshold, he kept looking back, trying to figure out what this hardware store actually was. Ding! One special portion of malatang sold. Reward, 100 yuan and business points obtained. I allowed myself a small, satisfied smirk internally. This was pure profit, considering that soup only cost me 50 points in the system shop. I turned back to the crowd, my expression returning to a cold, impassive mask. After those first two examples, the atmosphere in the room shifted. The people waiting in line became noticeably more cautious and more suspicious. Then, a blonde kid in designer clothes stepped up and asked, "Boss, do you have sanitary pads?" The guys in the crowd burst into a chorus of suggestive laughter, while the girls just rolled their eyes in pure disdain. The comments on the live stream exploded instantly. "I give up, a hardware store selling pads is even crazier than the hot pot. This guy is a heavyweight. He's willing to lose his dignity just to win." They all thought this time, the boss wouldn't be able to pull it off. "If he actually has these, I'll eat my own phone screen right here." I didn't even flinch at the request. I just used my classic phrase, "Yes, I have them," and calmly turned around. I walked into the warehouse and returned a moment later carrying a large cardboard box. Inside were perfectly organized packs of every brand, day use, night use, and ultra-long, cotton, mesh, every variety. I'd originally stocked them for my girlfriend, but I'd sell to him first. I paused and looked at the blonde kid, who stood there like he'd been struck by lightning. Then, I gave him a price that took the air right out of his lungs. "That'll be 800, I said, as his face turned pale instantly. He clearly thought this was his big gotcha moment, but he was drowning now. "Damn it, how many girlfriends do you even have?" he stammered. "Hey, I never said I wanted to buy the whole box. I'm not forcing you to buy the box. I'm selling you the box because you asked if I had them. If I pull it out of stock, you buy it. That's the rule." At that moment, the blonde kid looked like he was about to burst into tears. He stared at that box full of products that make one person happy and another miserable. He looked at the crowd mocking him and finally had no choice but to pull out his phone. He paid the bill with a look of pure resentment on his face. He clutched the massive box to his chest like it was a shield. Amidst a roar of general laughter, he scrambled to escape the scene. The livestream chat went absolutely nuclear with comments. "Someone please calculate the level of emotional damage in that kid's heart. Walking down the street hugging a box of pads is a total social death sentence." Seeing the chaos, I was starting to believe my own hype. This boss really has everything. I bet he has an aircraft carrier hidden in that warehouse. I watched another massive payment hit my account and felt my mood soar. I lifted my head and scanned the long line of people still waiting outside. A faint, confident smile played on my lips. I called for the next person, fresh off 3 consecutive victories. Those unexpected wins had changed the entire vibe of the street. The once rowdy atmosphere turned heavy and strange. The crowd's expressions shifted from casual curiosity to pure, unadulterated disbelief. They were starting to realize that this normal-looking boss was anything but. Maybe I really was untouchable. I clearly wasn't just some ordinary guy. The next person to step up was a student with a baby face. He strutted forward, full of himself, and asked me with a smug look on his face, "Boss, that last stuff was too physical. I've got a more spiritual question for something that definitely exists. Do you have this year's National University entrance exam?" The second he asked, the entire crowd went silent. Everyone held their breath. This question was heavy. It was even more intense than asking for an AK-47. An AK-47 causes physical destruction. But if this exam actually existed here, it would shake the foundations of the nation. My lip twitched. I knew he was talking about the original, leaked papers. The actual test that hadn't even been administered yet. Suddenly, the system pinged. Customer demand detected. Item created. Entrance exam. National exam. Block B. Top secret. I felt a cold smile forming deep inside. I knew I couldn't cross that red line, but I knew exactly how to play with my words. I looked at the student, whose face was practically glowing with expectation. I kept my expression perfectly serene and said, "Yes, I have it." But I cut him off before he could even start celebrating. I added immediately, "I have the real exams from every previous year since the test was first established. Guaranteed originals, complete with detailed answers and solutions." "Wait, did you want the exam before the actual test date?" "My friend, we don't do illegal things here." A moment later, I walked out of the back warehouse. I was pushing a small cart overflowing with books. The metal frame rattled as I stopped right in front of the young student. "Seeing your spirit is so eager to learn, I've prepared a special complete set just for you. Finish these, and a top-tier university score will be waiting for you. That'll be exactly 1,000 yuan. The student's face darkened instantly as he looked at the pile. The stack of exercise books in front of him was high enough to bury him alive. His head began to throb. He came here looking for a shortcut, not more suffering. But the words had already been spoken under the gaze of countless eyes. He couldn't back out now. Trembling, he pulled out his phone and scanned the code to pay. He lowered his head, feeling the compassionate gazes of the crowd on his back. He wondered how on earth he was going to carry that mountain of knowledge home. I watched his silhouette fade into the distance and felt a spark of joy. I didn't just earn money and business points. I successfully helped a stray student find the right path. The challenge continued as a middle-aged man in a jacket stepped forward. His hair was slicked back and shiny as he strutted in with pure arrogance. "Boss, stop beating around the bush and get to the point," he huffed. "Give me 5 cartons of lions," he demanded, looking down his nose at me. "Can a hardware store sell cigarettes? Of course not. You need a specific tobacco license for that, and the approval process is brutal. Legally speaking, there was no way a simple hardware store could have one." The guy was already picturing me panicking and handing over a 10,000 yuan refund. And indeed, when I heard his request, I actually paused for a moment. I knit my brows slightly, looking like I was in a bind. But in my mind, the system was already processing the request. 5 cartons of Lion cigarettes. Tobacco sales license generated. Cost, 5,000 business points. I checked my current balance. I had more than enough to cover it. "Do you wish to redeem?" the system asked. Without a second of hesitation, I selected yes. As the man watched me with an expectant smirk, my answer shocked the entire room. "I have exactly what you're looking for," I said calmly. "What?" the man stammered, his confidence vanishing instantly. The customers in the shop and the viewers on the live stream were completely stunned. They all thought the same thing. The boss has finally gone crazy. He actually dares to sell cigarettes? He's really lost it this time. The crowd was buzzing, convinced I had a death wish. You can't just sell tobacco like it's nothing. It's a legal minefield. People were shouting to report me, but I ignored their shock. I walked into the back warehouse and returned with more than just the goods. I carried the 5 cartons of cigarettes the man demanded. But in my other hand, I held a framed certificate for everyone to see. It was an authentic tobacco retail license, 100% real, issued to my hardware store. The paperwork was flawless. The legal representative was me, Luffy, and the issue date was just yesterday. The middle-aged man's eyes nearly popped out of his skull. He snatched the license and inspected the seal, the font, and the serial number. He couldn't find a single flaw in the document. A hardware store with an exclusive tobacco license? It made no sense. I set down the 5 cartons, not a single one missing. The total came to exactly 1,000 yuan. The man looked back and forth between the perfect license and the Lion cigarettes. They were the real deal. With no excuses left and the price being fair, he had to scan the code to pay. He grabbed his items, looking like he'd swallowed a lemon. I watched him walk away with his head hanging low in defeat. From that moment on, the hardware store transformed into a high-stakes business hub. The atmosphere in the shop shifted completely. The crowd's hunger for gossip and drama was replaced by pure, unadulterated shock. I thought, is it really possible for me to have everything they ask for? The next person to step forward was a young woman with a very sweet face. She shyly asked, "Excuse me, boss, do you have any kittens for 1,000 yuan?" I looked into her eyes and saw nothing but genuine sincerity. Without a second thought, I replied with more enthusiasm than ever. "Of course I do," I said, heading toward the back with a grin. I emerged from the warehouse carrying a tiny surprise. It was a ragdoll kitten with piercing blue eyes and incredibly fluffy fur. But I didn't stop there. I immediately hauled out a litter box and a large bag of premium imported cat food. "Here you go, miss. Consider these extras a welcome gift from me. And if you need a scratching post, I have a high-quality solid wood one right here." It was obvious this girl wasn't here to cause trouble or chase a payout. The moment she saw that adorable ragdoll, her face lit up with a massive smile. She didn't hesitate for a second to pay the 1,000 yuan. Then, beaming with excitement, she said she wanted the scratching post too. The crowd whispered in disbelief. "I give up. This boss really has everything. I even threw in the litter and food for free. Now that's what I call service." People stopped calling it a hardware store and started calling it the almighty grocery. Ever since that gas tank incident, the challenges people threw at me became weirder and weirder. But no matter how absurd the request, my answer remained the same as the hours ticked by. The massive line in front of my shop finally began to shrink. Every single person walked out clutching items they never dreamed they could find here. Meanwhile, the viewer count on the live stream was absolutely exploding. It shot up like a rocket from the initial 10,000 viewers. The number kept climbing until it stabilized at 50,000 people, with gifts raining down like a waterfall. But just as the hype reached its peak, a strange comment flashed across the screen. "What kind of farce is this? How can a hardware store have all this stuff?" That one comment was like dropping a cold stone into a pan of boiling oil. Exactly, they must have hired actors. Since when do hardware stores sell fondue skewers and pads? Way too fake. Finally, someone said it. I've been suspicious for a while now. This coincidence is just too ridiculous. You ask for it, and he just has it? This smells like a scripted scam. Hey, is anyone actually near this shop right now? I'm in the next town over, and I can't take this anymore. The more they doubted, the more they wanted to come here and unmask me. Friend, we're live and direct right now. What did I think of this comment calling for everyone's attention? The call to unmask the farce received. Countless responses in an instant. Every kind of reaction imaginable. Squads formed to expose me, claiming they'd find my script and my team's group chats. They popped up like mushrooms after a heavy rain. People from all directions started heading toward the city, converging on Yang City, all targeting my little hardware store in the old town. But I had no idea. I had just sent off the last customer from the morning challenge. I stared at the long list of payment notifications on my banking app. Then I felt the business points in my mind skyrocket into the tens of thousands. I couldn't stop smiling. This time, I had truly hit the jackpot. It was only for a moment, though. As I grabbed a glass of water to take a breather, I noticed the insults filling my screen. Scammer, you can't even write a good script. It's full of holes. We're waiting for you to go bust tonight. I froze for a second, and then it clicked. I understood everything as I looked at those comments dripping with indignation. But instead of getting angry or doubting myself, I felt this was completely normal. To me, these doubts weren't a crisis at all. They were a massive opportunity. I cleared my throat, looked straight into the camera, and flashed a confident smile. I've seen the skepticism in the chat, and I get it. My shop is a bit unusual. So, I'm officially inviting everyone to come down and unmask Oliu hardware in person. My promise from this morning still stands for the afternoon session. Any fan who shows up can challenge me to find any item under $1,000. But if I can't produce it, I will compensate you 10 times its value. My words were firm, dripping with undeniable confidence. Back in the city center, the crowd calling for my downfall went silent. They were stunned that I actually dared to invite them myself. Was I just gambling everything on a bluff, or did I really have no fear? Fine, let's go and empty his entire shop, they shouted. Seeing me issue the challenge publicly pushed the doubters over the edge. Even those who lived far away felt their pride take a hit and started packing. They had to see with their own eyes if I was the real deal or just a loudmouth. After dropping that bombshell, I cut the live stream. I wasn't running away, I just needed a moment to process everything. This morning had been a total dream success. I stared at the long string of numbers on my phone and exhaled. I was grinning like a happy kid, despite my 100-kilo frame. Over 20,000. I had earned more than 20,000 in a single morning. That figure was more than I had made in an entire year of running this shop. Seeing my balance hit 5 figures gave me an unprecedented sense of security. But as I looked at the numbers, a question suddenly popped into my head. If customers can buy from the system, can I buy things from the system for myself? Ding. Yes, as long as the host has enough business points. Any product in the system store can be redeemed for your personal use. The redemption price will be the same as the acquisition cost for sale. My eyes lit up instantly as I thought back to that brave guy who tried to buy a K-series weapon. I remembered the system notification saying the product had been created. This system really dares to sell absolutely anything. I couldn't help but shudder at the thought. But a second later, the excitement rushed back. Doesn't this mean that as long as I have enough business points, I could theoretically own anything? Anything in the world I wanted was within my reach. Just after 1 p.m., a loud commotion erupted in front of the shop. I watched as 3 or 4 men marched inside with aggressive looks on their faces. Each one was holding a phone or wearing a small sports camera on his chest. Every single lens was pointed directly at me. The leader was a tall, fat guy who kept talking loudly into his phone camera as he walked. He shouted to his stream, "Brothers, are you seeing this? Our Justice Squad is here to unmask the truth. We've arrived at Oliu Hardware, and now we're going to personally reveal the facts." He called me an internet scammer, but instead of getting angry, I stood up with a radiant smile. "Welcome, welcome. Please, come right in." The group of 7 or 8 people looked completely thrown off by my sudden enthusiasm. "Humph, cut the games," the leader snapped. "I'm sure you already know why we're here." "I know, of course I know. I made it very clear on the live stream this morning. Welcome to my humble shop, gentlemen. The rules are the same as they were earlier. If a product exists in this world and costs under 1,000 yuan, I can get it for you. But to make sure you don't disrupt my business, you are obligated to buy whatever I find." They hesitated, seeing how confident I was. I had even more composure now than I did during the broadcast. Doubts started to creep into their minds. Maybe those people this morning weren't paid actors? Could I really have that much talent? But they were already here. The arrow was notched and ready to fly. They had to prove if I was a fraud or not. "Do you have skincare products?" the leader asked, his voice dripping with disbelief. He couldn't wrap his head around a man like me selling beauty supplies, especially not in a hardware store that reeked of machine oil. How could I possibly stock high-end skincare for women in a place like this? But my ability was incredible. If I could pull out a box of pads, skincare was nothing. "Of course I have it," I said with a grin. There it was again, that same word. The classic pivot that made the big guy's heart start to waver. I walked out holding an exquisitely wrapped gift box that looked incredibly expensive. His confidence, which had been hanging by a thread, completely collapsed. "Brother, you really have a sharp eye," I told him, sounding reluctant. "I was actually planning to keep this set for my own girlfriend. But since you need it, I'll part with it, even if it breaks my heart." I guaranteed it was authentic and offered a full exchange if it didn't work. I whipped the QR code from under the counter and shoved it in his face. He saw the mischievous glint in my eyes and realized I wasn't heartbroken at all. I looked like a hunter who had just cornered the easiest prey in the world. With his pride wounded and his chest tight, he begrudgingly sent the payment. As soon as the money hit my account, my smile turned even more radiant. "Next, who's the next brave soul?" I called out to the grim-faced crowd. One guy stepped forward, refusing to believe I could actually have everything. "I'm going to unmask this clown," he muttered. "Boss, give me a doll." I froze for a split second, genuinely stunned by the request. I pointed my finger toward the ceiling and said, "Of course." This time, I pulled out a rectangular box almost as tall as a person. I gave the guy a wink while he stood there, frozen like a statue. It was the latest model, a 1:1 scale realistic simulation with medical-grade silicone and smart heating. I told him it was 10,000 yuan as he stared at the box with a face as red as a tomato. He never imagined a hardware store would actually stock something like this. Under the watchful eyes of his friends, he paid the money, caught between laughing and crying. He looked like a man who had just lost his soul. He stood there, staring into space, contemplating his life choices. He was probably wondering how on earth he was going to get that shameful secret home. I looked out at the remaining crowd in the middle of the bright afternoon sun. I thought, the more they doubt me, the more they'll buy. So I asked, any other challengers? A middle-aged man in a trench coat hesitated for a long time before finally speaking up. Hey boss, do you have a fishing rod? He asked, thinking he had played it safe. Even if I had one, he figured it was just a useful tool and he wouldn't lose out. My answer was as decisive as ever. Sure, do you want a lure, hand, or casting rod? The question left the fisherman completely stunned. He didn't expect a hardware store owner to know so much about specific gear. A hand rod, he stammered. I let out a laugh, told him to wait a moment, and turned around to grab it. I stepped into my seemingly bottomless warehouse, leaving the crowd behind. A moment later, I walked back out holding a carbon fiber hand rod. It was brand new and exquisite packaging, paired with a fully rigged competition line set. I set the payment QR code down on the counter with a flourish. I flashed a grin that bloomed as bright as a sunflower in the afternoon heat. I told him he was in luck, as this was my last one-way limited edition battle rod. I pointed to the scanner and said, that'll be exactly 1,000 yuan. The crowd finally realized that no matter what they asked for, I'd find a way to make it a 1,000 yuan combo. Seeing that challenging me with difficult items only led to humiliation, the rest of them got smart. A skinny kid rolled his eyes and suddenly had a brilliant idea while rubbing his stomach. He thought he found a loophole in my inventory logic. He looked at me with a smirk and asked for something impossible. Boss, can I get some fried noodles? He asked, but I didn't even blink. I told him I had luxury seafood noodles with abalone for a friend price of 298 yuan. I pulled a steaming, overflowing portion of seafood noodles right out of a thermal cooler. The kid stood there petrified as the scent of fresh ocean harvest filled the air. The guy behind him saw this and thought, food can't be that expensive, right? Suddenly, the hardware store, which should have smelled like oil and gas, transformed. The aroma of delicacies floated through the air as the anti-counterfeit squad turned my shop into a buffet. Their leader let out a massive burp and said, I give up, brother. Your warehouse is a literal treasure chest. Hearing their words of praise, I simply gave a modest smile. I told them they flattered me, but asked them to spread the word once they got back. The inspection squad had arrived aggressive and angry, but now they were just laughing like fools. Of course, leave it to us, their leader said, sounding like he'd caught a fever for my shop. They promised me they would upload the footage exactly as it happened. They didn't edit a single word, and the first wave of exposure hit the internet that afternoon. Those guys actually kept their promise. They posted the videos they recorded across all the major social media platforms. The footage showed everything, starting with their arrogant and inquisitive attitude at the beginning. Then it captured their expressions, shifting into pure, unadulterated shock. It ended with the scene of everyone surrounding the counter, eating and drinking happily. They stuffed themselves until they couldn't take another bite. The whole ordeal was full of dramatic twists, but all I cared about was hitting my next goal. I needed to accumulate the remaining 60,000 business points to reach level 2. I was dying of curiosity to see what wonders would appear in the level 2 shop. By the end of the day, I was dog-tired, but one look at my bank balance changed everything. Seeing my account grow and my business points skyrocket made the effort worth it. I could only describe the feeling as the exhaustion of a successful man. It was a happy kind of tired that settled over me as the quiet of the night took over. I lay down in my small, sturdy bed and scrolled through my phone before drifting off. I scrolled through short videos, watching my follower count climb toward 200,000. That massive sense of achievement was something no video game or novel could ever provide. Suddenly, I spotted a private message from a fan. Boss, I'm from another province and my mouth is watering watching your streams. Can those high-quality seafood items you sell be sent by courier? That message was like a bolt of lightning that instantly illuminated my mind. Online orders. I could ship everything by courier as long as the fans needed it. Why should my customers be limited to Yang City? My market could be the entire country of Manhwa, maybe even the whole world. The moment that thought hit me, I couldn't contain my excitement. I jumped out of bed and rushed to open my management page to record a new video. Hello everyone. To thank you for your support, Olio Hardware is starting a trial run today. We are launching online ordering with nationwide delivery. It doesn't matter what corner of the country you're in, as long as the courier can reach you. For now, we're accepting cash on delivery for all valid products under 1,000 yuan. I posted the video and immediately started researching how to process out-of-province orders. Meanwhile, a food blogger with millions of followers was walking out of a famous local restaurant. Big Tang patted his bulging belly with a look of pure satisfaction. This place isn't bad, he muttered. The portions are generous and the flavor is authentic. Suddenly, his cameraman, Xiaoli, shoved a phone in front of his face. Boss Tang, look, the comment section and private messages are about to explode. Boss Tang, trust me this time. That shop sells everything you can imagine and more. Big Tang read the messages, his brow furrowed with confusion. Reviewing a hardware store? Is this a joke? What do they serve? Garlic sautéed screws. Xiaoli laughed along until a clip from my recent live stream started playing on the screen. The video showed customers devouring spicy stew and fried noodles right inside the shop. Big Tang's skeptical smile slowly faded as he watched the footage. His expression shifted into a mix of intense curiosity and professional instinct. This is real? What on earth is this place? As a media veteran, he instantly smelled a viral hit hiding in plain sight. A hardware store that sells gourmet delicacies and even fulfills the most bizarre customer requests. That premise alone had incredible marketing potential. He started imagining the possibilities. A professional food blogger going to review a hardware store. The title alone was clickbait gold. Who wouldn't want to click on that to see what happens? With a spark of excitement in his eyes, Big Tang made his decision. To Yong City, we're leaving right now. But boss, we just ate, and we won't arrive until tonight. Big Tang waved him off and got in the car, ready to research my shop the whole way there. Let's see what tricks they've got up their sleeve. We're going tomorrow morning. The next morning, I had barely rolled up the metal shutters of my shop when I spotted two people already filming a video right at my doorstep. I didn't think much of it at first. Ever since I started gaining a bit of a reputation, all sorts of people had been showing up every single day. I figured it was just another group trying to expose me or chase some clout. Lian greeted the World Cup players with her usual enthusiasm, and then she started wiping down the counter on her own. The man at the door was Big Tang, who had spent the entire night preparing with his cameraman, Xiaoli, right outside Olio Hardware. He adjusted his collar and looked straight into the lens. Flashing his signature smile, he delivered his usual intro before quickly shifting gears. With a tone somewhere between humorous and dead serious, he said, "Today, we aren't here to review a restaurant or a food stall. We're reviewing a hardware store." Even he could barely contain his laughter as the words left his mouth. Xiaoli quickly panned the camera toward the entrance of my shop. He zoomed in tight on the weathered Oliu hardware sign, pushing the contrast to the limit. Finally, Big Tang took a deep breath and took the lead. He stepped inside the store that so many netizens had been raving about. The moment they stepped into Oliu hardware, a mix of metal, oil, and sawdust hit their noses. Big Tang looked around the shop, scanning the aisles. The shelves were packed with wrenches, pliers, electric drills, and parts he couldn't even name. No matter how he looked at it, this place had absolutely nothing to do with gastronomy. I saw them walk in and walked over with an enthusiastic smile to greet them. Big Tang looked at my young, sincere face and suddenly felt a bit self-conscious. He hesitated, realizing that asking for food in a hardware store sounded like he was looking for trouble. But then he remembered he was a professional, steeled his nerves, and asked if I took food orders. I was stunned for a second, but then it clicked. I just opened the online shop yesterday. I flashed a knowing smile and gave my signature answer, yes. What would you like to eat? Hearing that confirmation finally put Big Tang's heart at ease. He relaxed his shoulders and took another step forward. Then he asked if I had a menu or something similar to look at. As the word menu left his mouth, his face turned red and he almost burst out laughing. Asking a hardware store owner for a menu was easily the most ridiculous moment of his career. I looked at him with total sincerity and shook my head. No menu, I said. After all, this is just a hardware store. Big Tang felt a sharp sting of disappointment at my response. He figured he'd just have to order something simple, like fried noodles or pork trotters over rice. He thought that would be the end of the mystery. I looked at him with a slight smile and threw down a challenge. I told him he could order any style of cuisine or any dish he could name. If I failed, I'd consider it my defeat and pay him 10 times the bill. Big Tang's eyes lit up instantly at my bold declaration. As a professional food critic, he loved a confident owner and a difficult challenge. He asked if I was serious, trying to give me one last way out. Young man, when I do a review, I tell it exactly like it is, he warned. This video is going on the internet, so think carefully before you ruin your reputation. It was a well-intentioned warning from a man who had seen too many braggarts. He had watched plenty of owners end up looking like fools after one of his reviews. I just laughed it off and waved my hand dismissively. I told him this was a hardware store, so I didn't care about a culinary reputation. My blunt, realistic attitude made Big Tang chuckle. The last bit of worry in his heart vanished. He had planned to order something simple, but my confidence changed his mind. If you're that confident, I won't hold back, he said solemnly. He warned me again that if it tasted bad, he wouldn't sugarcoat the truth. He turned to the camera and whispered that I was an interesting kid. His eyes sparkled as he started building a difficult menu in his head. He held up one finger and ordered the first dish, Buddha jumps over the wall. The preparation process is incredibly complex, requiring rare and exquisite ingredients. It demands absolute precision over the heat and timing to get it right. Most ordinary restaurants wouldn't even dream of attempting this dish, let alone a hardware store like mine. Xiao Li's camera zoomed in on me, hoping to catch a look of panic or hesitation. But I just nodded calmly, showing no signs of backing down. Big Tang watched me in silence, clearly admiring my composure. Then he added his next choice, cabbage and consomme. Those two should be enough, he said, though he knew the dish was deceptive. It's the pinnacle of Sichuan cuisine, where the essence lies in a broth as clear as water. In terms of difficulty, it actually surpasses Buddha jumps over the wall. Big Tang paused for a moment before switching gears entirely. He added 2 Western dishes, baked snails with foie gras and truffle sauce, and beef Wellington, a menu that fused the absolute peaks of Eastern and Western culinary arts. It was an extreme test, a direct provocation designed to see if I'd crack. But I didn't show a single hint of worry. Inside my head, the system notification had already chimed. Customer menu detected. Buddha jumps over the wall. Cabbage and consomme and baked snails. Foie gras with truffle sauce and beef Wellington. The system kitchen could handle them all, so I felt completely at ease. I looked at Big Tang and gave him a polite reminder about the bill. Gentlemen, the price for these specific dishes isn't exactly cheap. Big Tang waved his hand with the casual generosity of a top food blogger. Price is no object, as long as the food is worth the cost. I'll base my fair evaluation strictly on the quality of what you serve. I nodded and headed toward the back storage area. Not even a few minutes had passed when I walked back out. I was carrying exactly 4 dishes in my hands. In terms of appearance, presentation, and aroma, they were flawless. They were, quite simply, perfect. Big Tang and Xiao Li stood there, completely petrified by what they saw. Tang looked at his phone in total disbelief. It's barely been 2 minutes, he muttered, already sensing something was wrong. Even a basic beef Wellington takes far longer than that to prepare. He whispered to the camera, I suspect this is just pre-packaged, reheated food. He opened the Buddha jumps over the wall, and an intoxicating aroma exploded. The rich, unique fragrance hit him like a physical wave to the head. He took a spoonful of the thick, golden soup and tasted it. His eyes lit up as the flavors of sea cucumber and abalone fused perfectly. The flavors completely overwhelmed his palate. Big Tang looked at the camera with a face full of pure shock. My God, this broth is indescribably perfect, he began. This sweetness doesn't come from MSG or some artificial powder. It comes from the slow, patient simmering of premium ingredients. He looked like a man who had just reached enlightenment. Every pore in his body seemed to open up with satisfaction. After savoring the aftertaste, his gaze shifted quickly. He turned his attention to the bowl of cabbage and water. The liquid was as clear as a mountain spring. After the impact of the first dish, his expectations had skyrocketed. He looked at the camera and said, I take back everything I said. I thought I was here for a joke, but I'm here to learn. He carefully took a spoonful of the crystal-clear broth. There wasn't a single drop of grease or a speck of impurity. Only a delicate, captivating aroma of meat filled the air. The moment the soup touched his tongue, his eyes widened again. If the first dish was a passionate explosion, this was pure elegance. It was the definition of subtlety and depth. He could taste the essence of old hen, duck, and Jinhua ham. There wasn't even the slightest hint of heaviness in the flavor. He picked up a piece of cabbage with his chopsticks and showed it to the lens. Look at this. They only use the tender heart of the cabbage, blanched to perfection. It keeps its natural sweetness while soaking up every drop of that superior broth. This is the supreme flavor that comes from true simplicity. He looked genuinely moved as he declared, this chef has conquered the peaks of Chinese cuisine. Then, he turned his attention to the Western dishes with visible excitement. He sliced a piece of the baked snail, coating it in the foie gras and truffle sauce. The firm texture of the snail and the richness of the foie gras melted together. It was a luxury experience that left him momentarily speechless. When it came to the beef Wellington, he couldn't find a single flaw if he tried. The golden pastry was crisp, protecting a layer of savory mushroom duxelle. The center was a perfect medium rare, releasing a flood of juices with every cut. The meat practically dissolved on his tongue, rich and deep in flavor. He kept muttering to the camera like a man possessed, my God, this aroma is insane. Suddenly, he set his silverware down as if he had just remembered something important. I know what you're thinking, he said. Is this better than the food I cook? He let out a self-deprecating laugh, his face full of sincere admiration. Comparing me to this place is an insult to the chef. I make restaurant food, but this is a masterpiece. With that, he turned toward me behind the counter and asked for the bill. I already saw the price the system had calculated in my mind. I didn't add a cent, I just charged exactly what the system indicated. The total came to 1,799 yuan. When Lao Tang heard the total, he looked genuinely shocked. He had eaten at countless luxury restaurants where the bill was 10 times higher. But compared to this quality, that price was an absolute steal. He paid with a massive grin on his face. Before leaving, Lao Tang gave the shop one last meaningful look. This place is a bit cramped, little brother. Take my advice, expand if you can. Once this video drops, people are going to beat down your door to get in. I knew exactly what he meant given his massive influence in the food world. The video would attract foodies, famous bloggers, and even professional chefs. My little hardware store was about to be overrun. But I had no plans to expand. Handling a few customers a day was already exhausting. If hundreds of people started lining up, the workload would literally kill me. And hiring staff? That was out of the question. My back room didn't even have a single scallion. Everything was created by the system. If an employee saw me performing magic instead of cooking, it would be game over. I decided right then, if this place blows up, I'm switching to a scarcity marketing strategy. I'd limit the number of daily customers or switch to a strict reservation system. Sure, I wanted to make money, but not at the cost of my own life. Money is infinite, but I only have one life, and things unfolded exactly as I predicted. Lao Tang's team was incredibly efficient. The day after he left, a video titled "Eating 3-Star Michelin Food in a Hardware Store" dropped. It was posted across every major short video platform. Immediately, social media went into a total meltdown. The video sparked a massive storm of heated debates. No way this is real. Buddha jumps over the wall in a hardware store. Look at Tang's face. He's definitely not acting. What kind of divine plot twist is this? The comments were flooded with people thanking him for the find. Just how delicious must that food actually be? I just bought my high-speed train ticket to Yong City. Don't even try to stop me. I just want to know what it feels like to eat a beef Wellington in a tool shop. Countless new fans, lured by Lao Tang's video, clicked the link to my profile. They expected to find a blogger who specialized in hardware store gourmet, but when they arrived, they were all left completely stunned. They discovered this hardware store owner was actually an all-powerful player. It didn't matter what bizarre item people asked for in the comments. I always replied with a simple, "Sure, I have that." The man who has everything. At that moment, the new fans finally understood why Lao Tang went to a hardware store. I had already anticipated the coming storm, so I didn't just sit around and wait. I recorded a new video, officially launching my next move. It was a scarcity marketing strategy, and I kept a serious face as I addressed the camera. I thanked everyone for the support, but explained that as a solo owner, my energy was limited. Starting tomorrow, the shop would implement a strict purchase limit policy. For non-hardware items like food, drinks, and electronics, I'd only serve the first 20 customers. Once that limit was hit, sales for the day would stop immediately. At the end of the video, I made sure to give my fans some sincere advice. My shop is tiny and my capacity is limited, so I don't recommend traveling thousands of miles for this. It was a long way to come just to be disappointed. I warned them that if items sold out, I wouldn't break the rules just because they traveled far. I told them to be rational and think twice before visiting. Between my warning and Lao Tang's viral video, my influence reached a fever pitch over the weekend. On Monday morning, I lifted the metal shutter as usual and completely froze. How could there be this many people in my usually quiet, lonely alleyway? The street was completely flooded. A massive sea of people had gathered, stretching all the way back from my front door. The line stretched to the end of the alley and curved back for hundreds of meters. A dark mass of heads filled my vision, including influencers holding up their gear, selfie sticks, professional reporters, students with backpacks, and curious tourists packed the space. The alley was completely blocked, looking more crowded than a tourist trap during a holiday. At the entrance of the alley, I even saw traffic police trying to maintain order. I stood there paralyzed, realizing I never imagined the shop would become this famous. When the crowd saw the shutter rise and I finally appeared, the atmosphere shifted instantly. A massive roar of cheers and commotion erupted as people shouted, "It's the owner." They screamed at me, "Owner, give me the Buddha jumps over the wall. I'm first in line." Countless shouts echoed as camera flashes and phone lenses surrounded me. I just stood in the doorway, completely stunned. My head was spinning, realizing that overwhelming wealth had finally arrived at my door. But my only thought was, to hell with this, how am I supposed to handle this crowd? I turned around, went back inside, and dug through the back of a shelf for a megaphone. I stepped back out and shouted, "Friends, brothers, thank you for the support." I looked at the chaos and told them, "Nobody enters until there is an orderly line." I made it clear we wouldn't start until the street was clear and the pushing stopped. I knew that if I let even one person in now, the people in the back would riot. I wasn't about to deal with that kind of ungrateful, problematic headache. I put the responsibility on them, and to my surprise, the restless crowd began to cooperate. A long, winding line finally formed with some semblance of order in the alley. Meanwhile, inside the provincial department office of Yong City, the atmosphere was just as tense as a battlefield. An agitated middle-aged man, clearly the leader, stood there frowning. He looked at the data report in his hand and barked, "Xiao Wang, what's with these tourist numbers?" He was wondering why the figures had suddenly spiked like that. But the visitor counts at our official tourist spots hadn't changed at all. A look of disbelief and denial washed over the employee, Xiao Wang. "Chief, they aren't here for sightseeing," he explained. "They're all here to check in at a shop. A hardware store," he added, making the boss's frown deepen even further. "What's so special about a hardware store that people are flocking to it? Did Yong City just launch some industrial tourism project I didn't know about?" The young man quickly handed over his phone, showing Mr. Tang's viral review video. The boss took the phone and watched it intently from beginning to end. His expression shifted from initial confusion to shock, and finally, to uncontrollable excitement. He slammed his hand on the table and jumped to his feet. "This is a massive opportunity," he shouted, "a gift falling straight from the sky." The leader gave the order immediately. "We must seize this moment. We have to go now. We need to promote this heavily, but first, we must confirm the situation on the ground. I want the propaganda department to follow up and turn Mr. Liu's hardware store into our city's new calling card." We'll coordinate with the traffic department to increase personnel and keep the roads clear. The tourism bureau needs to design a route centered around that shop to guide people to other local businesses. Every department responded instantly to the massive surge of visitors flooding into Yang City. Everyone wanted a piece of the action. They couldn't let a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity like this slip through their fingers. As for me, I was completely buried in work. I strictly enforced the sales rules I had set for myself. After serving 10 customers in a single category, I simply drew a line on my small chalkboard. I hung a sign on the door, "Today's stock is sold out." But the customers who missed out didn't just leave. They booked nearby hotels, determined to be first in line the next morning. I was busy from sunrise until the dead of night. Finally, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I saw the last person out. The final customer of the day finished his payment and left the shop. Only then did I collapse into my wicker chair and let out a long, heavy sigh. My body was exhausted to the point of breaking, but my spirit was strangely electric. I checked my current business point balance, 105,320 points. I immediately opened the system's upgrade page to see what was next. Inside the system, a seductive light was glowing. With a surge of excitement, I pressed that small red dot. Congratulations. Host selection confirmed. System mall successfully upgraded to level 2. It was now a high-end department store. Product categories expanded, and the value limit per item jumped from 1,000 to 10,000 Manhwa yuan. The back warehouse was upgraded, store remodeling was unlocked, and the skill center was refreshed. As I scrolled through the dazzling new features, my breathing quickened. Any item I wanted, as long as it was under 10,000 yuan. Store remodeling and future tech. It was incredible, and I wanted to scream just to vent my joy. I held it back, realizing only 2 words could touch the depths of my soul right now. I jumped out of my wicker chair and rushed toward the warehouse door. With a steady gaze, I reached out and pulled it open. I froze as an immense, pure white space stretched out before my eyes, seemingly endless. Perfectly ordered rows of metal shelves rose up, extending into the deep void. Signs marked every category, neatly dividing the entire vast area into sections. The organization was flawless. Suddenly, a loud noise came from the metal shutter at the front of the shop. I heard a knock. "Excuse me, are you Boss Liu? We're from the city propaganda department." They slid an ID through the door gap. I picked it up and confirmed they were government officials. Outside stood 2 employees in office attire, led by Xiao Wang, the same man who had seen my video days ago. "Hello, Boss Liu," Xiao Wang said, enthusiastically extending his hand. He explained that my shop was a viral sensation and the city leaders wanted to turn it into a landmark for Old Yang City. Hearing that the government wanted to promote me on such a massive scale was a dream come true. I had no choice but to give them a warm, professional welcome. I invited them in, but they needed to verify if the rumors were true, that I really could provide anything. They needed to ensure the credibility of their campaign, and I almost laughed at how perfect this was. I waved my hand dismissively and told them that to celebrate my shop's upgrade, the new limit was 10,000 yuan. 10,000 yuan, Xiao Wang asked, remembering my previous limit was only 1,000. I smiled and told him things were different now. I had to show the leaders my true capability. Xiao Wang nodded, impressed by my guts, and began thinking of items under that 10,000 yuan price point. The range was huge, from a tiny needle to something as large as a motorbike, covering almost all daily goods. He wondered what kind of massive supply chain I had backing me, so he decided to put me to the test. "Boss Liu, do you have motorcycles?" he challenged. "Yes," I replied with a single, confident word. I stood perfectly still, watching him with a calm smile, without making a single unnecessary move. Xiao Wang waited, but when he saw I wasn't heading to the warehouse to get it, he grew confused. He couldn't help but ask, "Aren't you going to bring it out for us to see?" "Of course," I said, "but my rules state that once you choose an item, you are obligated to buy it. Only if you truly intend to purchase it will I give you the price and bring it out." Xiao Wang stood there, completely perplexed that he had to pay just to see the product. But I wouldn't budge. My attitude was crystal clear. A high-quality motorcycle from the system mall would be a major investment. It would cost tens of thousands of business points, not to mention the legal permits required to sell it. I wasn't worried, though. As long as I had the points, the system could handle the paperwork. Xiao Wang looked uncomfortable, realizing he was in a tight spot. He had come today with a limited budget and couldn't actually afford a motorcycle. He glanced around the shop and an idea struck him. If he couldn't buy something expensive, he'd buy something cheap. That would still count as a test, wouldn't it? Besides, he had to go home and cook soon, so he cleared his throat and looked at me. "Forget the bike, Boss Liu. Give me a kilo of celery, 2 kilos of pork belly, and a 4-kilo grass carp." This test was convenient and cheap, and he could actually use the groceries at home. A hardware store having a motorcycle isn't that strange, since it's technically machinery. But pulling out live fish and fresh vegetables? Now that would be a real trick. That would truly prove my shop could provide absolutely anything. If I could actually pull this off, it meant our future collaboration was a guaranteed success. I didn't even hesitate before heading toward the back. A moment later, I walked out of the warehouse with a bag of crisp, fresh celery and a perfect slab of pork belly. In my other hand, I carried a massive fish that was still flopping and squirming. Xiao Wang stared at the flopping grass carp and the mundane groceries in front of him. He froze for a second, then a wave of pure relief washed over him. He burst out laughing and immediately scanned the code to pay. No problem at all, this is perfect. Our national challenge project can officially begin. He reached into his bag and handed me a thick, textured folder. Boss Lou, this is the draft for the collaboration plan our promotion department prepared. I took the folder from his hands. I opened it and pulled out a document titled, The Everything Search Challenge. Xiao Wang, acting as the event planner, stepped to the side to explain the strategy. We want to leverage your massive internet influence alongside our city's official platform. Xiao Wang pulled out his phone and skillfully opened a short video app. He logged into the official Yang City account and showed it to me with a smug grin. Look, our official account is verified. It carries a lot of prestige. I took one look at the screen and almost burst out laughing. The prestigious account with the blue check mark only had 30,000 followers. I glanced at my own personal account, which was currently skyrocketing toward 1 million. I realized exactly what was happening. They were using this collab to hitch a ride on my traffic. I cursed him under my breath, but I kept my face stone cold and professional. We quickly hammered out the details and agreed to post an official announcement video together. The target audience was every single tourist visiting Yang City. Any traveler needing a specific item could visit Oliu Hardware for a shot at a 10,000 yuan prize. I opened my mouth to ask who was footing the bill, but Xiao Wang read my mind. Don't worry, Boss Lou, we handle the prize money to build hype. You just keep doing what you do. I understood the game immediately. The government provides the cash and the policy. They were using my reputation and my search skills to jumpstart the entire local tourism industry. Tourists would flock to Yang City just to challenge me for that 10,000 yuan reward. But they wouldn't just visit my shop. They'd have to eat, find a place to stay, and explore the local neighborhoods. The entire city's economy would get a massive boost from the foot traffic. It was a classic kill two birds with one stone strategy. I had no reason to refuse, so I agreed and decided to drop a bombshell of my own. Since I'm partnering with the city, I'll show some sincerity and raise the limit to 100,000 yuan. Xiao Wang's eyes lit up with pure shock and excitement at the news. He knew a higher limit meant more viral potential and more eyes on the challenge. He thanked me profusely, grabbed his fish and pork belly, and prepared to head out. He and his colleague walked out the door, looking completely satisfied with the deal. I stood at the entrance of the hardware store and watched them disappear down the street. On the outside, I looked calm, but inside, I was beaming with satisfaction. With the government's official seal of approval, my little shop's future was set in stone. I was already famous enough, so I needed steady growth, not a flash in the pan. Right then, the familiar chime of the system notification rang in my head. A new main mission had appeared for the shop. The conditions for level 3 have been announced. Please check them, host. I focused my mind and immediately opened the system panel. I needed to see what it took to upgrade the mall to the next stage. The requirements for level 3 were displayed in bold letters. First, I needed 5 million business points and mastery of 2 level 2 professional skills. Second, I had to complete a special transaction worth over 500,000 yuan. Third, Oliu Hardware's influence had to cover 3 different industries with official media backing. I took a sharp breath as I stared at this list of borderline sadistic requirements. 5 million points. That was an astronomical figure compared to what I had. The difficulty jump from level 2 to level 3 was easily 10 times harder than before. I checked my current balance. Only 5,320 business points remained. The joy of my recent upgrade evaporated instantly, replaced by a cold reality check. I quickly shook off the gloom and adjusted my mindset. I decided to save those remaining 5,000 points for emergencies. The most urgent task right now was remodeling the physical shop. I didn't want to face another suffocating crowd tomorrow with no room to even stand. System, activate the shop remodeling function. The interior was completely redesigned. I designed a spacious, bright lobby to welcome my customers. I added a private VIP room for high-stakes negotiations, a small but indispensable luxury. The system generated the custom plan, estimating the renovation cost at over 3,000 business points. Construction was set to run automatically from midnight until 6 a.m. tomorrow. The system guaranteed zero noise and no light pollution during the process. Once the shop renovation was finalized, I let out a long sigh of relief. It was finally done. I knew that starting tomorrow, everything would change. With a brand new image, I'd be ready for the challengers coming from all over the country. I stepped back into the world of my inventory. The back warehouse had been completely overhauled. I needed to familiarize myself with this massive space, which had expanded tenfold. I had to memorize every area, every shelf, and the exact location of every single item. That way, when faced with a customer's most extravagant request, I could pull it out instantly. I stood in the renovated warehouse, ready to deliver my signature service with total confidence. But suddenly, a critical problem crossed my mind that made my heart skip a beat. The system warehouse was now impossibly large. It was an exaggeration of space. What if a customer accidentally wandered in and saw the impossible scale of the interior? The sales floor was fine, but the secret behind that warehouse door was my biggest concern. The back warehouse, after the upgrade, was an endless void of interior space. It completely defied human logic, so vast it sent a shiver of fear down my spine. If a secret this massive ever came to light, I knew what would happen to my little shop. It would be confiscated immediately for government study. The system chimed in. Host, rest assured, the warehouse space is protected by multiple layers. Without your consent, no other intelligent being can enter the warehouse, and no object can damage it. Hearing the system's response, my heart finally stopped racing. I let out a deep breath, and the tension in my nerves finally snapped and faded away. The next morning, I woke up groggy and stumbled toward the sales floor. The moment I stepped inside, I froze. The sleepiness vanished instantly. I stared in total shock at the sight before me. The old, worn-out hardware store from my memory was gone. The dim lights, crooked shelves, and the heavy smell of machine oil had vanished without a trace. Now, the space was clean, organized, and so bright it was almost blinding. Every tool and part was perfectly classified and neatly arranged on the shelves. It didn't look like a hardware store anymore. It looked like a high-end industrial showroom. A surge of pride and ambition welled up in my chest. This old district of Yang City was dying, with shops closing and land being abandoned everywhere. I made a silent vow. Once I made enough money, I'd buy up every surrounding lot. I'd turn this shop into a true commercial empire, but my daydreaming was cut short by shouting outside. A crowd had gathered outside, their faces pressed against the brand-new, gleaming glass. Their eyes were wide as they muttered, "Is this really Old Kind's hardware store? What design company did this? It's incredible. It was a wreck just yesterday afternoon." I walked over with a smile and pulled the front door open. "Morning, everyone. Feel free to step inside and take a look around." The crowd swarmed in, and shortly after, young Wong from the communications department arrived. He and his film crew stood frozen, completely stunned by the brand-new shop before them. "Boss Liu, what construction crew did you hire?" Wong stammered, remembering the old dump. The contrast was so intense it felt like he was standing in a different dimension. I couldn't exactly tell him this was the work of a magical system. I just laughed it off and said, "Trade secret, but what do you think of the new look?" Wong snapped out of it, his face lighting up with professional excitement. "This atmosphere, this style, it's perfect. We won't even need to adjust the lighting. Crew, get to work, let's capture this." Watching the scene unfold, the fans in the shop started joking around. Boss Liu is really hitting the big leagues now, hiring professional photographers and everything. After a long, busy day, we finally finished filming the promotional material. Now came the heart of the event, announcing the rules for the national challenge. I looked directly into the camera lens, my voice steady and full of confidence. "If I can't provide the item you ask for, I'll pay you 10,000 yuan in cash on the spot." The Tourism and Propaganda Bureau of Yanqing was handling the reach, leveraging my million-follower account. My mission from that moment on was simple: run the shop, wait for challengers, and stack up system points. I checked the system panel and saw the goal of 5 million in revenue. It didn't seem so far off anymore. With the challenge limit raised to 100,000 yuan per item, the progress bar was bound to move fast. A few big-ticket customers would be enough to make that bar skyrocket. However, looking deeper into the system, I still had 2 difficult hurdles left. I needed to spend skill points to learn new techniques and finish a specific high-value mission. I had to complete a single order worth over 500,000 yuan. The promotional video was finished that same day, the editing process moving at lightning speed. When the head of the Yanqing Tourism Bureau saw the final cut, he didn't hesitate. He approved it for immediate release, praising the incredible rhythm of the edit. The drone shots transformed our 5th-tier city into a cinematic, dreamlike paradise. But the real highlight was the shot of me standing behind the counter of my hardware store. On the screen, I didn't look like your typical, over-the-top influencer. I didn't have the exaggerated expressions or the raspy, desperate voice of a street salesman. I just stood there, calm and silent, as fans bombarded me with the most ridiculous requests imaginable. "Boss, do you sell the legendary Wind Hunter spinning top? I need a robot that does my homework." "Boss, I need a custom, high-quality leather Ultraman Tiga suit." From start to finish, my response to every single one of them was the same: yes. I said it with a firm, serene confidence that left no room for doubt. In just one night, the likes on that video proudly surged past the 1 million mark. But the real fuse that lit the fire was my challenge rule. It went off like a bomb. The top comment read, "Any item under 100,000 yuan? If he fails, he pays 10,000. Did I misread that? Does this boss own a gold mine, or is he just insane? An intern must have written that rule by mistake, right? Hey, at Yanqing Tourism, show your faces. This whole package is yours, so take responsibility." My God, guys, does anyone actually believe this? I was stressing about next month's mortgage, but this looks like a gift from heaven. It's in Yanqing, right? I'm already looking up flights. The guy above me must be out of his mind. Even with just a high school education, you wouldn't be naive enough to fall for that. This is 100% a publicity stunt in collaboration with the Yanqing Tourism Bureau. It's just a new marketing strategy for the city. If you go there thinking you'll win, you're a fool. What are you going to do to them? You won't get anything out of it. They'll just laugh at you behind your back. Final verdict: it's obviously scripted. I mean, the owner's expression is way too calm. A normal person would have burst out laughing at the mention of a homework-doing robot. As the video's popularity skyrocketed, most of the comments were skeptical and mocking. But Yangcheng, a tiny fifth-tier city on the map of Manhwa that no one had ever heard of, watched its internet search index multiply by 1,000 overnight. On every major travel app, flight and hotel bookings for Yangcheng began to surge abnormally. He was a giant in the industry, a master of infrastructure construction. His company was classified, ranked in the top 15. Globally, he was currently the procurement director for a massive engineering project in Yangcheng. His assistant, Xiao Chun, hopped out of the car and pointed at my shop, which was packed 3 rows deep with people. Li Wei adjusted his gold-rimmed glasses, his eyes flashing with pure disdain. As a veteran buyer who dealt with top-tier global suppliers year-round, he'd seen more marketing tricks than Xiao Chun had eaten meals, from German craftsmanship to industry revolutions. To him, it was always just a fancy concept on a PowerPoint slide. He saw my shop as nothing more than an elaborate influencer stunt. He figured I was just exploiting people's ignorance of specialized industrial goods to make a quick buck. He didn't come here today because he actually believed the hype. Subscribe to the channel now. Thank you. My God, don't miss out on the most exciting videos. Thank you. The mocking smirk on Li Wei's lips grew even more contemptuous as he stepped forward. He pushed his way into my hardware store with some difficulty. Li Wei considered himself a man of the world, but he couldn't help but pause for a moment. The scene of a loud influencer shop with blaring music he'd imagined wasn't there. The place wasn't small at all, and the shelves were perfectly organized. There wasn't even a speck of dust in the air like in traditional hardware stores. I looked barely 20, but I didn't have that typical impulsiveness of my age. I lacked the exaggerated air of those influencer shop owners. At that moment, I was helping a customer dressed head to toe in designer clothes. He looked like a wealthy young man, and the request he made was complicated even to Li Wei's eyes. Boss, I want the most comfortable ergonomic gaming chair in existence, not some mass-produced junk. I want one custom-made to fit my body perfectly. Hearing this, Li Wei frowned. A custom ergonomic chair was no joke. As a procurement director, he'd searched for something similar for a high-level executive once. For that kind of exclusive product, you needed a high-tech scanner. You had to collect nearly 100 data points from the user's body for a professional designer to model. Then the production line would take weeks or even months to manufacture it. The price would easily climb into the tens or hundreds of thousands. How could this little hardware store possibly pull something like that off? His assistant, Xiao Chun, whispered in shock, "Can he really get something like that?" Li Wei said nothing, watching with interest to see how I would handle the situation. I didn't need high-end scanners to trick him. I just looked at the elegant young man for 2 seconds. Inside my head, the system's voice rang out clearly. Customer need detected. Custom ergonomic gaming chair. Data collection complete. Item has been stored. Located in Locker 12, back warehouse. Production cost, 1,850 yuan. Suggested retail price, 800 yuan. My expression remained calm, showing no reaction in front of the crowd. I looked at the expectant customer and said a single word, "Yes, I've already modeled the perfect fit for your body, but the price is a bit high." The young man waved his hand dismissively, acting incredibly generous. "Price is no object. As long as the product is good, the money doesn't matter, okay?" I told him to wait a moment, turned around, and walked through the door to the back warehouse. The process took less than 3 minutes before I reappeared, pushing a sleekly designed gaming chair. The material of the chair looked extraordinary at first glance. The young man sat down immediately, and the second he hit the seat, he froze. A sigh of deep pleasure escaped him as his body relaxed completely into the frame. It was as if every joint and muscle was being perfectly supported by a firm yet gentle force. He was so excited his words tripped over each other as he adjusted the armrests. "This is it. This is the feeling. My God, I've spent tens of thousands on big brands, and they always fell off. But this, it's like it was made exactly for my body." He was wild with joy, standing up and sitting back down just to feel that perfect fit again. He pulled out his phone without hesitation. "Boss, I'm taking it. 8,800 yuan, right? Ship it now." He thought it was too cheap, but he wasn't about to complain about the price I set. The young man paid happily and filled out the shipping form like he'd found a hidden treasure. Li Wei watched the whole thing, wondering if this shop was actually as incredible as it seemed. He suspected an actor at first, but the man's reaction and the chair's quality were too genuine to ignore. As more customers closed deals, I kept repeating the same pattern. Listen, say yes, and head to the back. Within minutes, I'd return with the exact item, and Li Wei's disdain was replaced by burning curiosity. He pushed through the crowd and approached the counter with a heavy, authoritative voice that silenced the room. I raised my head, looking calmly at this middle-aged man and his extraordinary aura. Li Wei looked me straight in the eye and made his move without any preamble. "I'm looking for a specific part," he said, pulling up a complex design on his phone. It was a dart-shaped flange transition joint with an incredibly intricate structure. He rattled off impossible specs: Hastelloy B31 alloy, PN16 pressure class, and a perfect 15-degree monolithic cast.